Alright lads, we're back again, and this is an AMA, just a spot snap AMA that I got asked a bunch of questions on Instagram. I got a lot of questions on the market and the macro, and people kind of somewhat seem to be a bit fearful after this cryptocurrency crash. I know it's not just crypto that's crashed, I know the Nasdaq's down quite a bit, I know even your favourite tech stocks have taken a hit. I think people are generally fearful because I think with cryptocurrency, we had a 69k high on Bitcoin, probably 4,800 high on Ethereum, and now Ethereum's 1,200 plus or minus maybe $50. Bitcoin itself sitting at 16.7k, so that's a considerable hit. What's that hit on Ethereum? It's still probably 70%. So I know that people are generally hurt from that. I think a lot of guys, the mistake that they make though, they look at their all-time high portfolio and then they compare and sort of, they get stuck a bit in the past. I think that with cryptocurrency, if you've held from the last fucking highs down to now, I do think that the market will go lower. I don't think that we've hit despair yet, but I think that it would still be quite crazy to sell. If you've held a 70% drawdown, well, the concept of even like another 40% drawdown shouldn't really scare you because you've already held a massive drop. You should be looking to DCA on the next drop. I imagine that there'll be another one. You should be looking to get your dollar cost average down quite a bit. I say this to guys all the time, like guys that I know in real life. I think that one of the best things that someone can do is be putting 10% of their income, cash income, like their fucking net income, into investing. Whether that's crypto, I think that it predominantly should be crypto, not these fucking shit coins, but it should be things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. I would consider them more the blue chips. I know that crypto can disappear tomorrow, theoretically. It could be a hack or some sort of regulation or something like that, but I find that it's quite unlikely. I think the risk to reward ratio in crypto is still swung in the positive by quite a bit. I think that if you're putting 10% of your net income in every month, that it's an amount that you're not going to miss too much, but it still can go up multiples in the next cycle. I know for some of you, 10% of your income, leftover income net, every month is going to be fuck all. But still, it's just a good habit to get into to invest. It's at 10% dollar cost averaging into the market. It's not enough to hurt you. It's not enough where you'll be too strained or in too big of a position. I know a lot of you guys go under massive stress because you think that you just need to put all your money into crypto. But it's one of those assets where the risk to return, you don't need to have a massive bet. Even if it goes up like 5 or 10x next cycle as a whole, then you can still make a very good return. You don't have to sit there and put absolutely every dollar you have in, because then you're in too big of a position, and on the down swings you can be forced to sell. I don't believe anyone should be leverage trading unless you're an absolute expert. But even if you're just holding spot, and then the market falls another 50% from here, and you think, well, fuck it, I need the money now. It's gone down. It could go down for another 2 years still. So you start to think like, I've got bills come up. I've got shit that I have to pay. You become a seller at the worst possible time. That's why I don't believe in being overexposed to some asset like crypto, because it does have historical, multi-year bear markets that can be completely soul crushing. I know myself, I held from 2018 to 2020. And I watched my portfolio go down several millions of dollars. I do consider myself an expert in cryptocurrency. I ran a fund. I was a partner there's 8 of us. I was a partner in a fund that was a considerably, in crypto terms, probably a mid-sized fund, but for most of you it would be large. We managed about 90M. And the investors had a great return. None of our investors were pissed off, disgruntled. They all made good money. We made a bunch of fucking millionaires in that fund. Some of the assets we had invested in went up like 10 to 50x. So we made a considerable amount of guys' money. But so crypto in general, I know that that's not answering questions specifically. I've got a lot of questions on crypto and a lot of questions on investing, and a lot of people that seem to be fearful, which is generally a good sign for the market. It's a good sign that people are afraid. I think people are afraid. If you check the Wall Street bubble chart, I think Diary of a bubble. It's like the Wall Street cheat sheet. Diary of a market cycle, but it determines the bubbles and the bursts. I think that people are at fear now. I don't think people are in despair. I think we're in capitulation, but I don't think we've hit despair yet, where it stays down for 6 to 12 months and people are just fucking in despair. It's just fake outs, and then it just grinds like through the mincer and altcoins get absolutely crushed because the Bitcoin dominance goes back to maybe like 45 or 50%. I don't think Bitcoin dominance will go back as high as it was because I think that Bitcoin in general, it has some headwinds. It has headwinds with the Mt. Gox coins that are seized. They have to be sold early next year, I would assume. It has the Silk Road coins that are seized by the government. They have to be sold. It has Michael Saylor, who may become a net seller after this because even if the price goes back to where he's break even, he may sell some because he's probably got people on his ass constantly now. Like he might have people fucking screaming down his neck because their like asset, the Bitcoin investment that they made, their MicroStrategy company is tied to Bitcoin now. So it's their investment so large that a good part of their company kind of rides on this Bitcoin bet being successful, which means that when Bitcoin gets back to a break even for him, he may lower his exposure, which means he'd become a net seller of Bitcoin and he has a fuckload of it. I mean, at 30K, he probably has like several billions of dollars worth that he may unload just to lower his fucking like risk. I mean, at this point, I would imagine that Bitcoin, the bet that he's made, it's very much tied his company to the success of Bitcoin. You know, if Bitcoin was to fucking fail, I think that he would be finished. And that's not to say that I think that he's an idiot or anything like that, because he's obviously not. Michael Saylor as a person is very intelligent. You can just tell listening to him. You know, he's had a lot of success in his own company. He's survived through the .com, MicroStrategy. They took like, I think, a 95% drawdown after the .com and then ultimately would go on to make new highs. So I don't think he's a fool. I think that he's taken a massive stab in something obviously he believes in. And to a point that is admirable. I know that he was early on Apple and things like that, or quite early, so I know that he's no fool. I think a lot of guys give him a hard time, probably because they're fucking like, I don't know, maybe jealous of his conviction, or they think that they just want to see him fail. But I don't think that you should go after people like that. Like, you know, if they put their money where their mouth is, I think that's very important. You see a lot of the Twitter dorks and fucking people that just talk shit. They're not even in a position. They have pretty much like very little money at all. And then they'll post all these fucking like paper trades up and all these ideas of shit that they have. And then if it's right, they'll be like, yep, told you that I was right. Doesn't mean shit. Like, just being right in investing means fucking literally nothing. If you didn't profit off your call, that's pretty fucking dumb. You know, it only matters who's stacking the M's up, and no one can talk shit about Saylor. Like, he'd stacked up a lot of money. He's done very well for himself. But no, let's get onto the AMA. I mean, it's fucking after midnight here, but yeah, let's do it. I know that people are afraid with investing. I think that's going to be a good topic. How can you build I'll start with this one. Fuck it, why not a business question? How can you build your personal brand for your business? Depends what you do. I think that what you do and who you are needs to corroborate with your business. If you're trying to build a brand as like, you know, a fitness guy or a fitness coach, or like, you know, you might sell like fitness wear or something, and you're obese or you're out of shape, or it's very obvious that you don't train, you're not strong, you're not in shape, I think that sort of thing is very fucking like diluted, especially in 2022. People want to see you. Like, you know, if you're obviously a personal brand, they really want to see you. But if you're even running a business now, like, they want to see that you're about what you say you're about. Like, if you're selling protein shakes, or you're like running a protein company or some sort of supplement store, and you're like out of shape, I don't really believe in that. I think that you should like respect yourself, and you should be self-aware enough to where people look at you and they want to buy your product, or they look at you and they're like, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. I know that that's not always the case, but I think that you have to be a professional. You know, even if you're just selling protein shakes, I think that you need to look like a guy who goes to the gym. So how do you build your personal brand? It just needs to be congruent. You know, you need to be who you tell people that you are. You know, you need to be a good representative of your business. Like, even if you're, I don't know, maybe you're like a car salesman, but you're running the business now, so maybe you run like a car dealership or something like that. And then people see you driving around, and you're driving like a shitbox around outside of work and things like that. Well, it's going to be difficult, because if you run a business like that too, a lot of that stuff relies on you looking successful. You know, if you're That's what a lot of people don't understand. That like when they see real estate agents and things like that, if they see people driving nice cars and doing nice things and out in nice places, they assume the person's successful, and that means that the person knows what they're doing because they're making good money. Whereas if they see like a salesman in some fucking shitbox car and all these other things, they think that the person's not very good at their job, so they don't have a very good product to sell. That's just like basic psychology. That's why a lot of that shit, it matters in sales. And it matters if you have a business that you appear successful because people will feel more comfortable. The crazy thing, it's a very much like an anomaly. People like to go to a business that's already successful. If they know that you're like offering discounts and you're like fucking, you really need the business and you really need the work, it's very hard to like get the work versus the guy who's flooded with work. It's like that scarcity mindset, to he who has little, he who has a lot, more will be given, and he who has little, more will be taken away. Even the little amount that he has, that's very fucking true. If people see like, it's just an anomaly, if people see like one line for one product is very flooded with people will just assume that the product's great. Whereas if they see like the one next to it and the line's not very good, like not very long, they'll just assume that the product's not as good. Like Louis Vuitton, I mean, they could have the store, they don't need to leave people out the front. They've got enough staff inside. I've seen multiple times to show the people around, but they create like an artificial like demand. Like, they sort of restrict supply of the people that are allowed to be in the store. So it creates almost a period of FOMO because people think like, there's a lot happening in here. People are happy to wait. They don't need my business. They're letting people wait outside. So it keeps it like fucking special. It keeps like an artificial scarcity versus the other stores near it that won't have any of that. People can just come and go. So they treat it more like a toilet, less of like an in-demand product where people are in there. They're like, I have to, I can't fuck around here. It's a privilege to be here because there's a lot of people waiting. So that's, those are all the strategies. But again, you reiterate it back to your business. You have to be a good ambassador for your business. And if you're building a personal brand, it just has to be congruent to me. You have to be a good ambassador for your business. I mean, my brand is that I'm obviously fucking rich, successful. I know a lot of shit. I don't sit here and read cue cards. I don't get prompted. It's just me here. I read it from my own apartment. I know everything that I say. Not only do I know it, I'll fucking live it. But my Instagram is my personal brand. I mean, if you want to follow me, it's Stephen Ronald Bell on my Instagram. But you'll see, I mean, what I post is very much what I live. So I think that a lot of that, it has to be congruent in 2022. You can't LARP. Like, the days of LARPing are kind of over. You have to be who you say you are. People want to see that. You might be able to exaggerate like that last 10%. But if you're, again, selling protein shakes and you're overweight and you're like fucking obviously not really in the gym and things like that, well, people are going to assume that your product's shoddy. Because why would I listen to you with supplements if you're fat? Or why would I listen to you with supplements if you're some fucking skinny rake? You obviously don't know what you're doing. Or you would be in shape. So you have to represent your brand. Why would I use this fucking like sell a mansion or a house that I have through a real estate agent that shows up in a busted car? Because if he was good at his job, he should have nice shit. So it's just, that's the way that the brain works. And I know if you're just rising up in the ranks, you can't just like automatically just get the best stuff, but you still have to be presentable and clean. A lot of that stuff, image or perception, is reality. That sort of shit, like sales and things like that. How you appear is how you get treated. So that's a big thing. You have to understand that. What's a good secondary business to buy or create, not online, if you are time poor? I don't think there's any good secondary brick and mortar businesses that are fucking like, passive. I think passive business is kind of bullshit. Like, it's a bullshit fucking concept. I mean, a lot of guys buy like vending machines or like maybe buy a car wash and then you can sort of be like stand back, but that just means that you need to hire people to do the job. I have seen guys lately where they buy like ATMs and things like that and then they get paid a percentage of, or like, I think they buy it, but I think they lease it. I don't know if you can buy ATMs, but they essentially lease them and then they put them in different like businesses that use them a lot, like high traffic areas, and then they keep a percentage of the fees. I think that's probably as close to a passive business as you can get. But again, someone can vandalize the machine or like fucking steal it or smash it, or it can break. And it's, I imagine, an expensive piece of equipment. I don't know if you would be responsible for having to like, monitor it. You probably would be to a point. But Again, I don't know how you would really like manage that. I think that it would have to be any business that you're going to run, like if it's a shop, especially not online, it's going to need some attention from you. Or you're just going to have to hire staff, which means that it's going to cut into your overhead from the get-go. The best business is always one that you don't really need staff on. And then you just get staff as the business like comes through, or you have staff that you can hire extremely cheaply, because the staffing is what that's just like eating at your overhead. That's just eating your money away. That's eating all your earnings, and you don't have like a clientele yet. So when you first start a business, demand's going to be very low. It's going to be hard to get people in. You're going to have to market. You're going to have to promote. You're going to have to fucking like do things to get people in the door. And then if you're paying staff from the get-go when you're not really making much money, that can be problematic. That can be a lot of fucking stress on the business straight away, just eating away at your cash flow. So I think like a passive business is mostly bullshit. I think that a lot of people sell those sort of ideas, but it's not really a fucking thing. Especially a brick and mortar business, unless you have a business partner that you're happy to fund and let him do it all. But he has to be a track record of winning. And if he was a winner, he would already have money to start his own business. So a lot of that shit is bullshit. A lot of that stuff is a lesson on investing too. The best investments, guys like you, probably, unless you're like very connected, won't know about. It's if an investment comes to you, it's probably a scam. If someone wants you to help them with their business or something like that, it's probably bullshit. Because if it was a good investment and the numbers added up, they wouldn't have to come to you for money. So obviously the figures don't add up because there's no shortage of cash out there. I understand rates are higher now and that they've gone up and things like that, but if the numbers still add up, it doesn't matter what the fucking rates are. They still get loans. So businesses that you guys are going to get exposed to, even the investments or like the seed investing and things like that, are going to be scams most of the times. So you got to be very careful with that shit. All right, let's change it up a bit. Would you ever live in Australia again, or is it a lost country? I like Australia. I think the country itself is extremely beautiful. I think there are a lot of fucking like good Aussies there. I think there's a lot of good people in Australia. There's a lot of fucking like guys that are like family men, and there's still women there that are like family women as well. Specifically out of the big cities, I would say. I think the big cities are more of like a fucking dopamine factory, I guess you would say, where people just treat things kind of like a circus. There's a lot less integrity than the small towns. I was born in Traralgon, and then I grew up in Cranbourne, so I was in Victoria again. But the town that I grew up in, it was Traralgon South. It was a town of like 200 people. And then the nearest town was probably like 20 miles away, and that had maybe like 15,000 or 10,000 people or something like that. So it wasn't like a fucking big town. It wasn't a big city by any measure. Cranbourne itself's bigger. It's near Melbourne. But I was there again when I was quite young. But there are like hardworking people in Australia, and it's a good fucking country in that it's beautiful countryside. Like there's beautiful fucking land. You go down to everywhere. It's got a bit of everything. Like you can go to all the states, and it's almost like you're traveling overseas to a degree. Like if you go to Tasmania and then you go to like Victoria, each state has like fucking beautiful things to it. There's a lot of countryside that's good. Mountains, if you want mountains, there's mountains. If you want fucking beaches, there's beaches. The weather's extreme. You can go to like Tasmania and it's cold, and then go to Queensland or even like New South Wales, it's getting warmer, but Queensland's warm again. So it's kind of like, just so many climates. It's got a lot of potential, that country, but the government's fucked it. The government, it's very much focused on controlling the people there. It's very feminized. But it's not feminized in that, the feminist women that are trying to get ahead in life. It's full of angry women that just blame men for their own failures and inadequacies. See, I have nothing against feminists. I really fucking don't. I have nothing against the woman who says like, I want more power and I want more like fucking control and all these things, and I want more like rights and stuff like that. And then you look at her and you're like, all right, yeah, she's fucking like practices what she preaches. She's like studied, she's fucking like smart. She's in shape. And then I look at her and be like, all right, yeah, well, I can respect that she's fucking like, practices what she preaches. She looks after herself and she like is doing the work. But a lot of the women there are like pigs. Like they're fucking fat, obese, out of shape, and they just put no effort in. Like it's I'm in Poland or whatever, and it's not uncommon. Like most girls will still wear dresses and that, even if it's fucking like 2 degrees outside. Girls will still go out in dresses and walk around and look good and like be fashionable and like wear heels and things like that. In Australia, a lot of the women put no effort in. Like they walk around in like fucking yoga pants and all this like fucking crap. And it'll be like, you know, they're at the shops like walking around in these tight yoga pants and stuff like that. And guys think that it's like attractive over there. It's really weird. They don't understand that the girl does it because she's putting in no fucking effort. Like to even enter society, it's like she just puts fucking no try. Like she doesn't care. You know, and a lot of that sort of like feminist crap, it's just about being lazy. Like it's about just presenting the like laziest option to the world. You know, it takes time to get dressed up and look good. Like even for a guy, you know, it takes time to fucking like put effort in. You got to walk around in shoes and that aren't that comfortable. But that's like life. You know, you get out of life what you put in. If the best thing that they can come up with is just some like lazy fucking excuse of a fucking like attempt, yeah, it's always, and it always favors the laziest outcome. You know, the shit that they preach is always just like taking the easy route. Like feminism over there is just pretty much blaming men for all their fucking problems. You know, it's not. There are people who are like, you know, standing there and doing all this crap and like doing all the protests and that. A lot of them are just like rejects of life. So they didn't really have a lot of other options in their own mind. So now they're coping and being like, no, this is men's fault. It's men's fault that they're showing up at like 200 pounds plus. It's men's fault that they're like ugly already. It's men's fault that they're undesirable and like a lot of them are old. You know, it's not my fault or your fucking fault if you're a guy that some chick chose her path. You know, a lot of these like women, they'll be massive hoes in their 20s and things like that, and then they'll turn around and blame men in their 30s for not wanting them. You know, it's not the guy's fault that they fucking like blew their time away. You know, I don't sit there and blame people that I went to jail. I don't sit there and fucking like, even my ex that fucking like put his statements on me that ultimately got me charged with trafficking, I don't sit there and blame it. You know, it's my own fault that I did the actions. You know, I did the actions, I trusted people that maybe I shouldn't have trusted and things like that. But ultimately, the buck stops with me. You know, it's like no one forced me to fucking sit there and do the drug dealing or that crap. No one sat there and said, you know, you have to do this, you have to do this crap. And with these women, a lot of them, like, no one forced them to just sit in the fridge and just eat nonstop. No one forced them to rack up a massive body count, so when they're 30, no one wants them. You know, no one's fucking like, a lot of you take on like shame and guilt and things like that for like a woman's position that she's in life. You know, some of these girls got like 2 or 3 baby daddies, like 28 or younger, and then they're looking for someone to save them. That's not your responsibility. Like, that's not your job. You know, it's not your job for a lot of you to run around like try and fix up defects. Some of you guys, I know that it's hard for a guy because a lot of guys are like problem solvers and they like to think like, some guys specifically can be very good at it. They can fix people and like fix ideas and like have their own fucking like inputs and things like that. And they can be valuable. They can be good at fixing people up and getting them back to a standard after they fuck their own life up. But that's not your job. Like your job for a lot of you is just to like focus on yourself until you get a partner that's worth focusing on. Or like, you know, you eventually have your own kids and things like that. Some of you will spend so much time trying to put damaged people back together that the only person though, like, I got told by my own mum when I was like fucking very young. She said to me, she's like, Stephen, you know, you never want to stay with someone because you feel sorry for them, because in the end you'll only ever feel sorry for yourself. And it's very true. You try the concept, like a lot of people will be with someone or something just because they feel like guilty or they feel like they have to fix them or they feel like they have to solve their problems or like all this crap. And a lot of the crap is this crap before they even met the person. Like it's not even their responsibility. You know, and a lot of those sort of people just keep setting new fires. Like you put a fire out and then they just light something else on fire for you to fix. You know, it's just part of who they are. They're damaged. But, you know, you deserve like a fucking like person that's receptive. You deserve someone who, like a lot of you like dating these like single moms that have like got massive amounts of kids already and like they're fucking like made really bad decisions or their ex is some fucking loser sitting in jail or something like that. Like that's not your problem to solve. You know, it's some of you like fucking good men, like they're guys that have great potential and things like that, and it's like you just walk into the fucking toy store But instead of the toy store and buy shit out of the box that's brand new, you go straight into like the broken section and just start picking up dolls or something and like missing arms and missing heads and shit. And you're like, oh, I can fix this. Just get something better off the fucking rack. It's not broken. It's some of you just need to understand that like it's better to go down in looks and get a girl that's like fucking defective than it is to get this like 7 out of 10 bad chick that's got like fucking a kid and all this other crap with some fucking loser, because now that's going to affect you. I have nothing against single mums. I don't. I respect some of them greatly, that they fucking like stood up. Some guys are fucking terrible dads and just fucking massive fuckboys and losers, and that they just lie to chicks and get them pregnant and then leave them with nothing. They got like no fucking even income coming in to support their own kids. So I understand that single mums exist and that some of them are fucking like doing the right thing. But when they're like got single mums to like a few dads and the dads are fucking deadbeats and things like that, that's not your job to solve that. A lot of you should just fucking like run for the hills in that sort of scenario. It's not your job to put people together. It's not your job to play happy family with someone else's kid. Like, you should be focusing on your own legacy and being the man that fucking like can have his own kids. You shouldn't be running around trying to raise fucking other people's fucking like issues. That's not your problem. It's not your job. Live a fucking full life. Like, stop settling for this half shit. Should I do MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, Krav Maga for being disciplined, especially as a beginner? Well, I'm not going to say that I'm some fucking like fighting expert, because I'm very fucking far from it. But if I was going to say, if from what I've seen, I've been to classes for all of that except for Krav Maga, I would say that the best ROI is probably going to be boxing or kickboxing. Like, you're going to get better at that faster. MMA, from what I learned when I trained at like 6 months, it's fucking like very time consuming. There's a lot to learn. Like, you stand up, it's like you've dribble like a few little parts of yourself into different things, and they're all difficult. Like, you might do jiu-jitsu once or twice a week, but then you're doing like kickboxing like once or twice a week, and then you're doing like boxing once a week or something like that. So it spreads your time between a bunch of disciplines, and what can happen is it takes a long time to get good at them. So you can just be like okay at everything, but not even okay, like still a pretty low standard, versus the guy who just boxed for 1 year. And then if it's standing up, like, he'll still piece you up, in a boxing match. And on the street, he might even piece you up, because it's generally who fucking like can throw him the fastest, or like just starts throwing is generally going to be the one that wins, not the guy who goes for fucking kicks and shit and slips over. I've seen fucking so many street fights. I've seen street fights multiple times where the guys tried to kick and he slipped over. So one guy tried to kick, slipped over, landed on the ground, and another guy, like a guy's friend, just stomped the guy out. So I think kicking and stuff like that, unless you're a fucking very high level, if you're on the street, it can be dangerous. But you can slip, you can fucking be drunk and like not throw a kick properly, you can get hurt, lots of shit can happen. You can kick so you're on 1 foot and then something can happen, like you get tripped or something like that, and then his friend just starts stomping on your head. The idea is, the idea in prison or streets or things like that, I've seen fucking many street fights, maybe like 100 or more. So I think that the idea is generally not to go to the ground. I've not really seen street fights where it's ever been fair on someone who's gone to the ground. I've been in fights myself where guys have tried to take a friend of mine to the ground, and I've just booted him in the head repeatedly. I think that's mostly bullshit. I think that if you're like a wrestler or something like that, it's better be like one-on-one, or because someone else is just going to come in and start kicking you in the fucking head real fast. And it can be multiple guys, and once they kick you in the head a couple of times, your fighting's fucking done. It doesn't matter who you are. So I think that, probably boxing or kickboxing, but as a rule, I would say probably boxing. But again, I'm not a professional. Best country to get citizenship by investment in terms of being fast and simple? Probably Vanuatu at the moment. I know that their citizenship by investment's just been getting fucked over in the Schengen province, so I know that it's been getting cucked in Europe. But I imagine that'll change, like that'll probably go back. I think that they have the fastest system where you pay, I think it's like 120k, and then I think the 120k, but I think that's with a partner, and that they have meant to have a turnaround time of 1 month, and it's quite a like friction-free system. I don't know how, I'm not going to get into the exact particulars on it, but I know that there's a lot of fucking people that offer it in Vanuatu. I'm not going to get into like, the exact citizenships that I have, but yeah, from what I've heard, Vanuatu is a pretty decent one. Just if you want fast. If you want fast, I think that it is the fastest actually. So I think that that's one that you should look at. How do you deal with being bullied in childhood? Well, how do you deal with being bullied in childhood? I was bullied in childhood quite a lot. I never really had any friends. I went to 8 schools. So I went to 8 schools over 8 years, or over 9 years. So I was always the new guy. I didn't really fucking know anyone. I didn't really have anyone that would stand up for me. I had no one that would like stand up beside me if I got bullied. So I was always on my own. So I understand that, being bullied's a real thing. I know that it fucking like brings people down and makes them feel bad and can fuck them up into adulthood. But I just think that with a lot of that stuff, you need to remember that it's in the past. Like, it's easy to get stuck in the past and then focus like, oh, what do I do if like, some people will be like, oh, what do I do? Like my dad was fucking like a real arsehole to me and when I was a kid and now I'm fucking 30, but what do I do? It's like, that time's past. You have to fucking find a way to live in the present and then start looking to the future. You can't live in the past. I've known people where they've been fucking like sexually abused repeatedly and raped and shit like that as kids. And they've still managed to turn it around and fucking like become something. Or like fucking use it as fuel to do things because it's in the past. It's not shit that just sitting around stressing about bullies and shit like that. That's not going to change that it happened. Even if you think like, oh, I'm going to go bash the bullies that picked on me, that's pointless. It's the best revenge is the life well lived. It's very fucking true. I've gotten revenge myself on people. I've known many people that have gotten revenge on people. And I would say in general, it's the life well lived that hurts the most. People look at you and they're like, that really fucking cripples them, that you became something and they're a fuck up. That's the fucking most painful thing. For a lot of people, if you were to like put a bullet in them, it's almost like a fucking relief. There are people that instigate shit and try and cause drama and that because they just want you to put them down. They want the drama or like something interesting to happen in their life. But a lot of them aren't worth like even the police attention that you'd get from that. So yeah, with being bullied in the past, you got to recognise that it's in the past. The only way to live life and live and understand life is to understand it that it's lived forward and you can only understand it when you look back on it. But it's not your time to reflect yet. If you're sitting around thinking about times that you were bullied, I don't do that. I mean, I'm 37 now. I don't sit around and think about the times that I'd have kids like fucking messing my hair up or like pushing me around on the bus or like smacking the back of my head. I don't think about that shit really. Like, it's very fucking in the past. You have to let it go. You have to like let that shit die. Like if you're an adult now, I'm going to assume that it's in the past. Like you said, you were bullied in school at a period. So I think that, the best thing that you can do is best revenge, the life well lived. And I think that you can't live in the past. You have to focus on the future and the present. If you live in the past, it's just so hard to really you just miss your whole life. It's some people, I used to get it in the army hospital. I was in a veterans hospital for like 14 months. I fucking lived there 14 months straight. I don't think people will ever understand what it's like to be in a hospital for that long. But I used to see it all the time. Something had happened to certain veterans or things like that, or they were stuck in a period where they were at war and they couldn't get over it. They just couldn't get past that specific moment and it just controlled their whole life from then on out. And I'm not sitting there here saying that it's fucking easy. Like I've sat with the veterans that have been fucking devastated and crying and I've known many that aren't here anymore because they committed suicide. They couldn't get over that moment that happened and it pretty much destroyed them. I'm not sitting here saying that it's easy. Like if you have a traumatic moment, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you just forget about it because that's bullshit. Sometimes in life, things will happen and you're not the same person. But that doesn't mean that part of it is just accepting that's changed. Things are different now. A lot of shit can happen maybe you get a bad breakup. Your chick dumps you out of nowhere and fucking pretty much cripples you and crushes you or you have a massive loss. Maybe your dad dies or your mum dies unexpectedly and it's fucking crippled you. Maybe you lose a heap of money and maybe you fuck up in some way. Maybe you're just really hard on yourself and something happened that wasn't even really your fault, but you just can't get over it. You're completely stuck in that moment. You need to find a way to fucking close that door, close that chapter. But some of you, I think that you hold on to those moments too because it's a moment of safe. It's a safe time. For some of you, you want to go back to those moments too because you don't want to face the present. like the present now, because it's stressful. You know, it's stressful to accept that the life that you have now is fully in your control. You know, I've seen people where, like, fucking, I watched that Fritzl fucking documentary where he kept those people in the basement and fucking, like, you know, was abusing them, and I think he killed several fucking women down there or whatever. And those people have come out of the basement and they have to find a way to live. You know, they can't sit around every day and just fucking think of people, of the shit that happened there, and think of, like, missing people that died down there. They have to move on with their life and accept that that's happened and that's closed, but it was a very big part of their life, but they have to find a way to continue after that. So if people like that can move on with their life and, like, fucking, you know, accept that things happen, like, people go to jail for 20 years, get out, and they still have a life to live. You know, you can't. Your life, I think of life as a book of several chapters. Some people will have more chapters than others. And sometimes it's like you have a death. You know, it's like you just, the part of you dies and you just move on to the next one. You know, like, you might have a marriage that fucking, like, you think that you're going to be with the girl forever, and then suddenly she fucking dumps you, or she says she wants a divorce or something just out of the blue. Some people might have a kid that they love, and the kid fucking dies. You know, and then they're just, like, devastated. They had this vision of how their life was going to be, and now it's completely fucking crushed. But that doesn't mean that the life ends. They still have to find a way to live forward. You know, they have to find a way to carry on. You can't just sit there and think every second, every single minute, how fucking, like, you know, how you can go back and turn the chapter or something like that. You know, I've got a daughter in Australia. I don't talk about her on here, but she's nearly 4 now. She's back in Australia. I haven't seen her in probably, you know, maybe almost a year. But I look after her mum. I mean, I look after her. I fucking, like, send money there all the time. I send a considerable amount of money, enough for more than I'm meant to, but it's still not the same. You know, it's not the same as, like, fucking, I know it's difficult. You know, I know that it'd be hard for her to not have her dad there. I know that she's upset about it. And I know that it's not what I imagine. You know, it's not easy. Some things that you have to do in life, you know, some decisions that you make, again, you can only look forward. You can't look backwards and think, like, fucking sitting in the past. But that's just, you know, the way that life goes. You know, some things happen and some doors just close. You know, it's not something that you can fucking change. You know, it's what's in the past. You can't just sit there and fucking, like, think every second, because you just destroy yourself. The mind is an amazing thing. And I'm going to guess part of what you're discovering is that your mind's just not busy enough. Like, you're not doing enough shit. You know, if you just sit around, and I have sat around on my own for fucking a very long time. I used to sit around on my own as I was a kid. I used to get picked on so much in school that I would walk home. Like, I would get to school, it was like 20 k's away, the main part of the city. And then I would walk home from school. It would take me, like, I don't know, 3 hours or something, 3-4 hours to get home, because it was in the countryside. And then as soon as I got to school, I would walk home, and then I would just, like, sit in the shed, because it would be unlocked, and then just sit there until the full day was up. Sometimes, like, in the pitch black dark, so that no one noticed that I was there. And then I would just think, like, just how I was going to change my life. If it was always going to be, like, me getting picked on. If I would just be getting bullied every fucking day. And just how, like, I'd fantasize about who I wanted to be. Someone that could stand up for himself and, like, you know, have boundaries and tell, like, the kids to fuck off. Or tell people not to fucking, like, pick on me. And that took a very long time to get to that point. Like, get to that sort of fucking situation where I could do that. But those, like, thoughts and things that I had when I was sitting on my own, that's when I realised, like, your brain can either be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. An idle mind, like, if you have nothing fucking, like, nothing to do, it can attack itself. And it can fucking, like, start to destroy itself. Your mind's like, it's a crazy thing. If it has nothing else to do, like, if it doesn't have things to do, it like, obsesses about shit that doesn't really matter. Because you obsess about yourself too much, you start to obsess about, like, your appearance and things like that. And things that, like, you create more obstacles in your own head. Because your brain kind of, like, gets bored. So it starts to think of a bunch of shit that's kind of irrelevant, but in your mind it becomes a big thing. And that's part of why I started to get at that age, I think, that I'd had social anxiety. Because I'd be sitting around on my own so much and things like that. And I'd get a lot of, like, the thoughts where I'd be, like, really focused on myself and what things were holding me back. Because your brain's trying to solve a puzzle in its head. It doesn't have all the information, but it's trying to solve it. So a lot of that shit is just because you're not busy enough. Like, you need to do more shit to be, like, distracted to a point, but that doesn't mean watching Netflix and all that crap. Often it means like, working more. I know a lot of you guys don't work enough. To me, you don't work enough if you're not doing like 60, 80 hours a week, if you're a man. That's just the way it goes. I know some of you work like 20 or 30 hours and then fucking think that you're going to get ahead doing that. But then guys like me work 60, 80 hours. So how the fuck could you ever compete? Because I'm doing that for year after year. So I'm getting just so much further ahead of you. I'm doing multiples more work than you every year and it's just multiplying again. So how the fuck could you ever compete? So you need to do more. Bro, can you talk about where you can meet traditional women that value gender roles in Australia? Oh, fuck me, that's a difficult question. I don't think that... See, I'm too fucking like sided on this. I don't think that you can really like... Because I know that a lot of guys will say just go to the church or things like that, and a lot of that's bullshit. Just because the church itself, the church in the West is like a fucking capitalism, like circus. It's just a place where they just pay to keep members there, so they'll say fucking anything to keep as many members there as they can, often women. So the priests and things like that are very blue-pilled and like beta, and they fucking pretty much just cater to women there because they know if they keep the women there, they get a lot of guys that are kind of desperate and want to try and meet chicks there. So it's kind of like the nightclubs do, where they cater to women and then they know that more men will join and the men pay money to be there. So it's just a business model. I can see that. So where would I go to meet traditional women there? Again, it's probably going to be... I don't like the church setting because the church is going to invite, like, often bring a lot of freaks. Like, a lot of people that have, like, fucked up ideas. That's why they're at the church. So they're trying to repress their ideas or, like, church itself is... just doesn't really work in the West. It's very much like do as I say, not as I do. Because if you were looking into the lives of the people running those places, they wouldn't be very fucking like, they don't live what they preach. It's you got to be the guy that deserves the traditional girl. The idea that you can have a traditional girl that doesn't go to that a girl that goes to the nightclub or something here and there can't be traditional. She still can be. It just depends on the man that she's around. But a lot of guys in the church and that they want like just off the gate. Like they don't want to have to like prove themselves at all. They don't want to have to earn it. They just think that they should just get it. Like, oh, I believe in fucking this Christian, so that means that I deserve like a Christian girl who fucking like, she's God-fearing and she's going to be subservient. She's going to do all this shit. That's bullshit. That'll never fucking happen. There's only a very select religions in the world where that shit happens, and you'll find that it's places that are quite controlled. Like they're very careful about that sort of shit. They don't just let like, a lot of the poison brainwashing stuff come in, but that is in Australia already, so you can't really compete with that. You're going to be dealing with girls in the churches that still fantasize about being like, that free girl in the West. So it's going to be difficult. You have to be the guy, to me. Like I've been in the West in Australia and I've still had girls that were traditional. Not traditional as compared to here, but still traditional compared to Australia. They still understood gender roles and still did all that sort of stuff, but that's because I am who I am. I don't really settle for less. I think that you have to program girls as much as they're being programmed by the garbage on TV. It's going to be hard to program them to be a certain way if like they're watching fucking Kardashians and TikToks that pretty much tell them to be hoes. So it's somewhat difficult. It's more difficult, but you got to be the guy that deserves it. Girls that I hang around with, they generally fall into line. I'm not saying that they're like fucking worship me or anything like that, but they're generally just going to accept that I am the way that I am. And even if they're friends or whatever, they're just going to accept that I have a pretty high opinion of myself and I like things done my way, but I'm a giver too and I'm competent, so they can relax. That doesn't mean that they all want to suck my dick or whatever or things like that, but they just know the way that I am. And even if we're friends or like, get along or things like that, I'm just the way that I am. They're ever going to fall into line or I'm just not going to deal with them. So I think that's a big thing. You have to be a traditional valued man yourself. You can't want traditional values from a chick if you're a fuckboy. You got to accept that the traditional valued women are kind of like a diamond in the rough these days, especially in Australia. So you're going to have to give to get. You're not going to just get one and then signal fuckboy and she's just going to fly into your life. You're going to have to be, respectable and looking like you want kids and things like that as well. And you're going to have to be open about that. And you're going to have to like follow through with what you say. I think that if you get a traditional valued woman, and some guys try and get them specifically over here, and they just waste their time. Guys will be fuck boys, and they're just with the traditional girl, and they're just like wasting her time. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with like being a parasite in general. I don't agree with like, being a massive fuckboy to girls that actually aren't like garbage. I think that if you have a traditional valued girl and she says like she wants to get married and have kids in like 2 years, and she's like 24 or something, and you're like, yeah, that's me. And then you just drag her along for like 2 years, and then fucking you've got no plans to do it. And then you're pretty much just like, yeah, right, see ya. And then she just wasted years of her life. I don't agree with it. Because there are enough like fuck rags that you can do that to without like, shitting the place up. Because who's going to take over the world? Like, who's going to be the next generation? The fuckboy should just be a fuckboy, like with fuck girls. He doesn't need to shit the fucking like shittle in the well and fuck it up for everyone. So, my idea is, yeah, you got to be the guy. You got to be the guy that deserves a traditional girl, and the guy that fucking like is signaling that that's what he wants, and you got to know that that's what you want. If you want the marriage and the kids and things like that, you got to signal that. And you've got to fucking like be traditional. The idea that you're going to get a traditional girl if you're a fuckboy, I think that's pretty silly. Like, it's just destructive. It's destructive to the future too. Like, it's shitting in the well. These are the people that are going to have kids that eventually like take over the next generation, and you're just wasting their time and fucking them over to a point, telling her that you want something for you serious and like eating away at her time and then just fucking her up when it's harder for her to find someone. I don't agree with that. I think that's fucking dumb. Because there's so many girls that you can do that shit with. Like, jump on Tinder, you probably have fucking like 10 girls that you can do that shit at any time. So, I don't agree with shitting the place up in general. I think it's bad karma. What is more important in women, beauty or character? Well, I think both are important, actually. I think beauty is important specifically initially. I think that beauty's what like captivates a guy and captivates me. No one's going to really talk to a chick if she's a toad, or like he thinks that she's fucking ugly, or like not attractive, or she's fat or something like that. I don't think anyone really wants to like have too much of a conversation with someone like that. I'm not one of those guys that like sugarcoats it and fucking like, just be a nice guy and things like that. It's pretty like obvious what's unacceptable. I think that the only way to like people is to be honest with them. They're not getting anywhere by you pretending that they're not overweight. They're not getting anywhere in life if they're like 250 pounds and you tell them that, they're a bad chick and they're just be you, baby. You got your guy coming around the corner for you, whatever. Because all that's going to do is like, it gives her a false sense of hope, and she doesn't accept reality and face like the future and face herself. She could just drop like 80 pounds in like 2 years and then meet a guy. Instead, you'll give her this drummed up idea that she's like fucking perfect the way she is, and then she'll just be fucked up and alone and then have bad health. So, what's important, beauty or character? Yeah, both are important. Beauty's what captivates you, but then it's going to be her character that keeps you around. If she's beautiful, and then as soon as she opens her mouth, she's like just talking shit constantly, or like degrading people, or like you see her constantly talking bad to people and being like a nasty girl, or just being like disrespectful in general. And I'm one of those guys, like if I'm with a girl and she's disrespectful to everyone else but me, I still won't fucking like her. I know that she's only being nice to me, but then as soon as things the tide turns a little bit, she's going to be a cunt to me as well. Because I've had that so many times. I'm not like with guys as well. It's like if someone ever bitches about a friend to you, like, and they still consider them a friend, they're just going to bitch about you like later on. It's just the way that goes. So I would say beauty's more important initially, and then character's what's going to get you like the long term. That's what's going to get you through to the end. It's the person's character, integrity, and I know people don't really think that shit matters now, but it does. Integrity matters a lot. Integrity matters a lot in a partner. Integrity doesn't really matter so much. It still does matter if you're going to just be fucking a girl. The idea that I'm going to have some fucking girl in my apartment that's got no integrity, though, that's crazy. Because a lot of shit can happen. She could have some fucking like false claim, or like try and steal shit, or do crazy things there. So you still need integrity. Character is very important. Beauty's going to get you open the door and get you in, but the character is what's going to keep you around. I think women in general, if they are really attractive, often they think that that's all that matters. It's like a guy who has an unlimited amount of money. They don't understand that the beauty is often what like is looks good, and yeah, you're interested initially, and you'll like fuck them still. But the character is what keeps you around, keeps the guy around if he's like higher value too, because he's more aware of that, because he's probably not really a fuckboy. So, in general, I find like the girls that you fuck too, like the hotter girls, like fuck like eights or so. A lot of them, I'm not saying all, but they don't fuck as well either. Like they just don't. The hottest girls to fuck are always going to be like the sevens. Maybe even like a hot six, like a hot six though, not like a low six, like a six on the high end. They generally fuck the best, but the like eights or so, yeah, they generally, I don't know, it's something in it. They feel like they don't have to do as much work. I think they don't have to try as hard, but there are some that do, and they're like fucking very worth keeping. So you got to keep an eye out for that. When do I think crypto will start to recover? That's a good question. I think crypto in general will recover, the market. I think that it'll recover. I think we're going to have rate hikes until probably Q1 next year. I think we'll have probably like 3 months, maybe. I think the hikes are just about done. But I think that they're not just going to start lowering them either. So I think the crypto market's pretty much toast until probably mid next year. That's what, mid 2023. And then we've got the halvening about on like March 2024 for Bitcoin. So I think the market will start to get good a few months before then. And that's not to say that we'll be in a bull market, but I think we'll have found like a considerable range. Like I think that we might be back to where we are now or so by then. I think that if crypto goes the way that I see it, it's probably like going to go to 12K and then maybe like capitulate down to like 10, but stay in that range from like 12 to 10 to probably 14K pretty much until like fucking, I don't know, six months or so, 6 to 9 months. And then I think leading into the halving, maybe we can flip and get like 20K back. And then it can start like a new cycle after that. I think that once we flip 20K into support, after we've obviously capitulated, I think that'll be a very good buy. I think 20K or like 19.8 or whatever the high was from the last cycle will become a very strong support. I think that will be a good thing when that happens. So for me, I'm sitting on a lot of cash. You know, I've got fucking like a massive amount of cash, the biggest cash position that I've ever had. And I think that, yeah, I'm looking to buy. I sold Ethereum at 3,800. I sold probably like 4M worth. So I'm looking to buy back, I don't know, start buying back anything under 1,000 would start to get pretty interesting where I would start to deploy capital. But I think in general, Ethereum can go to like 600. And that's where I'll be looking to buy a considerable amount. If I can buy like, you know, a few thousand Ethereum again, that's my goal, to have that and then just hold it to like 2025, 2026. I think Ethereum in general has got a lot more potential just with I think it'll be deflationary once we get into a like good market cycle. I think now Solana's fucked and FTX is done. I think that's one competitor for Ethereum that's wiped out. I think BNB and like Binance Smart Chain and things like that, I also find that interesting, but it's not like Ethereum, it's centralized. And I know some dork will turn around and be like, yeah, Ethereum's centralized because, you know, all this like proof of stake and all that crap. And it is to a point, but that's the game. Like Vitalik's very intelligent. He's sold out essentially because he had to. You know, it's the game. Like Bitcoin itself, the miners and that, they'll all sell out as well. They'll eventually be censoring transactions or they'll be fucking like getting shut down. That's where the game's heading. You know, I fucking know all this shit. How do I build my character? I've lived a pretty soft life and so have become a soft man. How do you build your character? I think that you build your character by doing shit that's difficult. And it doesn't mean shit that's against the law. You know, a lot of guys, I don't want to be some guy that jumps on here and tells you to be some fucking outlaw. Because for a lot of you, you'll fucking kill yourself or fuck your whole life up. You know, it's not the fucking life that you necessarily need to lead. You know, to get in a bunch of fucking legal trouble or whatever. It's very stressful. It's very draining. It's hard to run a business if you've got like legal trouble because it's fucking very time consuming and the police make shit really hard for you. If you've got a business that relies on outside perception and you've got the police sniffing around you, it's going to fuck your whole business up. So I think that in general, it's just going to be building your character, it's going to be getting fit. I'll check your profile. I'm going to guess that you're probably not a fit guy as well. I mean, that shit all matters. You have to be fit Yeah, you just look like, I don't know, I can't see the full photo, but you don't look like fucking jacked or anything like that. But you look like, yeah, you're not a bad looking guy. But no, I think that just going to be building your fitness up. The foundational fitness is always going to be the first thing. You know, you're going to be a guy that can you run your 30 minutes on the treadmill on 11 Ks an hour? Can you bench your body weight? Can you squat your body weight? Maybe you want to squat like 1.2 times your body weight, deadlift like 1 or 1.2 times your body weight, and you can bench your body weight, then I consider you at least at the point of a man where you can start fucking like, you know, looking at other parts of your life. I think that physical hardness, like, you know, if you look like you can throw weight around, you can at least defend yourself. That's the foundation to start, to not be soft. You know, I think that in general there's a lot of soft guys running around. I give you fucking like props for being self-aware enough to understand where you stand in life. You know, you can't change who you are, you can't change where you're going to be unless you admit who you are. I know a lot of guys will hide behind anon characters and then jump online and fucking like troll. Guys will jump online and troll my TikTok and it's just anon after fucking anon telling me how shit I am, and they can't even face the world as they are. So fucking they're like fucking miles behind, like they haven't even started the race. They can't even take the mask off for a second and admit and just own where they stand. You know, that's the hardest thing with a man. You have to admit, like, take an inventory of where you are and where you want to be and what it's going to take to get there. That's part of like growing up and being an adult and being a man. So I think a good starting point is your foundational fitness, the treadmill, move into a boxing gym, start sparring after like a few months, once you can know the basic like defense and how to throw a punch. Start sparring, harden yourself up there. Start working more. You know, some of you need to work like 68 hours a week just to get ahead. Start looking at like leadership roles. Do you want to climb the ladder where you're working? Some of you don't understand that like responsibility is what fucking builds shoulders. Shoulders don't get built because a lot of you always like have a position to be a worm. You know, the buck doesn't stop with you. A lot of you always have a position to blame someone else, or you're not like in a position that bears the brunt. The guy who takes the fucking hit and the guy who's like, you know, the boss or the manager or something like that, he's where the buck stops, or even if he's like, you know, gets to the big boss. Once you're the big boss, the buck stops with you. You can blame people, but it doesn't matter. Like once you own the company, it doesn't really matter who you blame because it's you're the one that suffers. Like, it's your fucking bottom dollar. So running around and being like, yeah, this is the general manager or the store manager's problem, that doesn't matter because it's all fucking on you. So that's what builds big shoulders, responsibility. Guys hide from responsibility because you have to carry weight. You got a lot of fucking like people's expectations and things like that, and that's what hardens you. That's what, combined with boxing and the foundational fitness, it will make you a strong man. It'll make you a leader. I'm not saying that you're going to be a leader and that you'll get all the way to the very tippy top, but you'll start to be able to like, you know, command a presence, and people will start to listen to you and be like, yeah, this guy's competent, but he can also lead. So he can get stronger. You know, it's nothing to be like, you know, completely ashamed of. You know, it's nothing to sit there and get shameful over. Because some of you will be like, I'm a soft man and that means that I'm never going to start. Like I'm always just going to stay soft, and then you get like a victim mindset. You know, it doesn't matter if you're 40 years old or 50 or 60. You can still move into it, the direction that you want to be in. It doesn't matter that, you know, you might not get to be the fucking like heavyweight boxing champ of the world or like some fucking like special forces soldier, but you know, you can still be better than you were yesterday. You can still move in the direction that you want to be. And then once you've got, your foundational fitness, you build like, you know, start to show some leadership in work or like an initiative, things like that. You start to be able to command a presence. Then you start to be able to set boundaries and things like that as well. You know, set boundaries with women, men, how people treat you. You can uphold your boundaries. You can be direct. That's a big thing. You know, if you ever talk to me, you'll realize that I'm very direct, and I don't do it to be a cunt. Like I don't do it to fucking like make people feel bad. If I didn't care about a person, I wouldn't be direct with them. It's more of a brunt. Like being direct, you carry more heat because you're the one that fucking like, you know, the buck essentially stops with you. You tell them exactly what you think, and sometimes that causes controversy. So it's easier to just lie, be passive, and be like, yeah, man, that's fine. You know, it's like your mate goes to get in the car and he's pissed, and there's fucking snow on the road. And you tell him that you don't want him to drive because he's too fucking wasted. And then he's like, oh, no, I might drive anyway. And you take your keys off him. Like, it's hard to do that. Because fucking, like, he fucking, like, spin the car out and die. Like, he's so drunk that he can barely fucking, like, get in the car. It's easier to just be like, look the other way and be like, it's not me, it's not my problem. You know, but then if he fucking spins out on the road and wipes out a family or two, you have to be the one that fucking lives with it alongside him. So it's always easy to be passive, but being direct is, you know, it's like feeling the fire. It's like I've said before, like you've both got a sword and then you clang swords. That's what it's like to be direct. It's like putting a frame out there and they can battle it or accept it. But you say your piece, you know, you say what you think is fucking right. And you only say it because you want the best for them. You know, it's not something that you run around and like see people like fucking some ugly guy on the street and run up and tell them how ugly they are. That's just being a cunt. That's not being direct. But then again, if someone tells you like, do they look bad in this specific shirt or something, and you say, yeah, I don't like the shirt, that's direct. But again, it's if they want the truth, I think you should give it. That's the way it is for me. Like, I only believe if you care about someone, you should tell them the truth. Because only in the truth can they like fucking like accept reality, like see reality as it is. You know, it's more painful to. It's always easier to tell people a lie in the short term, like a sweet lie. You know, like just a white lie or something to get either yourself off the hook or get them, like make them feel a bit better. But that just creates like denial and it kicks the can down the road. It's again like telling the fat chick that, you know, she's fat but no one cares. Like she should still wait for this like fucking millionaire or someone that's very successful to like wet her up. And that just like it makes her happy in the short term, but it actually destroys her future because then she waits and the guy never comes and she dies alone and out of shape and like fucking lives the life of a fat person with medical problems. So that's the way it goes. I'm 21 years old and a virgin. Where do I find a good woman to start off with? Well, I don't know what your culture is going to be. Maybe it's like a cultural thing for you. Maybe you're like, you know, Muslim or something like that. I'm going to assume that you're not from your name. You know, I'm not some fucking like expert in many religions, but I know some of them don't believe in like just having sex or like sex at random or like sex before marriage or things like that. But from your name, I'm going to assume you're like a Western guy. I think that this virgin waiting for a virgin stuff's bullshit. You know, I think that a lot of guys put too much weight on their virginity, but it actually starts to control large parts of their life. You know, they get like a fantasy or like an obsession with sex or like losing their virginity or like an unfucking realistic expectation that sex is just so big, like it's just the biggest thing in the world. And in the West, it's not. Like contraception exists, you know, multiple forms of contraception exist, like the pill, condoms, all this stuff. Sex in the West is partially, at least very highly partially made to be enjoyed. You know, you don't want to get like complexes around sex, which can happen if you stay a virgin for too long. You know, you can think that it's just so big and it just becomes like this giant elephant in the room. And you think that it's huge, but then like the chick that you fuck doesn't think it's huge at all. Like to her, it's very small. And other people, they're like, yeah, I just had sex because it's fun. For some people, it's like, you know, going to like, I don't know, like a jumping castle or something when you were a kid. It's just meant to be fun, like going on the go-karts or something. You know, it's, for most people, I would say in the West, it's the thing that they just enjoy. They don't treat it as some like big fucking elephant in the room. So the longer you wait, the bigger the complex is going to be. So you shouldn't be waiting for some virgin or something like that to come along, unless that's a very much your religion and you're like very committed to it. I think you should just lose your virginity in general. You shouldn't wait for this special moment. I think that's mostly what chicks think. And then you can like reassess the world as a non-virgin once that monkey's off your back. You know, I'm not saying that it's like fucking you're a worthless person if you're a virgin or like you're someone that's fucking less than someone who's not. But I know that men can get complexes about it and it can become so big to you that you don't feel like a man. Like it feels like you're like missing a part of yourself. So I think that the best thing is probably to lose your virginity and get that like out of the way. You know, and then you can like reassess things from like after that. And look to things. I don't think you should sit there and think like, oh, I need to find this girl that's like a virgin and we're going to be married and we're going to like lose our virginity together. Unless that's part of your religion and that's like a fucking thing that you believe in. I don't think in the West that you'll be one of the very few people doing that. So there'll be a lot of barriers that you're creating in your own fucking life. How to dominate your girlfriend in every aspect, not just the bed. Depends. Does she want to be? Does she want to be dominated? Some women don't. It's a lot of guys think that like every woman wants to be dominated because they like fucking watched like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. There's some women that don't. Some women are professional women and things like that, and they just like to be dominated in the bedroom. It's like a release. But then outside, they don't like fucking like someone taking the lead or like taking control. To dominate, you have to prove competence. That's the thing. A lot of guys think that they're dominant and they just like dominant in bed because that's the easy thing. It's easy to just role play and a chick just submits and like fucking, does what you say and things like that in bed because it's all like pretend. But if a chick listens to you once you're not fucking, that's harder to get. Like it's harder to fucking like dominate a person outside of the bedroom because it's not sexual. It's like just fucking how things are. And of course, dominance is maintained or like shown by competence. No one will submit to a person if they don't think that they can like handle the lead. It's just the way that it goes. You have to be a leader. You have to have people follow you. You have to have people safe. You can't dominate a chick if she doesn't feel safe around you. You can dominate her in like a violent way or like a fucking like DV way or something like that, but that's unhealthy. Like that's unsustainable. Specifically in the West, you're going to get in a lot of fucking trouble if you're doing that shit. So I think that, yeah, it's going to be maintained or like shown through competence. You're going to have to be a competent guy, a leader, and then you'll have to do things and just see if she like falls under your lead. Some women will, some won't. That just means you pretty much telling her what to do on certain things and what you want her to do. And like, for me, it would mean I have my girl works for me and then I just tell her pretty much what to do and call me boss and things like that. And that's the way it goes. But if you've got a girl and she's like calling another guy boss and all this other stuff and she works for another man and like, another man's pretty much paying her and doing all this shit, I don't know if like you can really dominate her because she has a boss. Women can't really have two bosses. That's another fucking thing that they don't do. Even if her dad's too in her life, she can only have one boss. That's just the way it goes. How to not be emotional as a man in a relationship. I think that's mostly bullshit, that these fucking nerds mostly tell you not to be emotional at all because they themselves can't control their emotions. The only emotion that they can show is like fear. So now they just act like they've got this hard shell on the outside. They don't care about nothing, but it's all fake. You have to be able to show your emotions to a woman. That doesn't mean that you're fucking crying on her shoulder and telling her how upset you are or how hard your day was and things like that. But a lot of guys can't even show when a chick pisses them off. And the thing with women is they want to see emotions. They watch Kardashians. They watch a lot of dramatic shows on TV. Drama and like shit like that gets them wet. If you can control the drama in her life, like it's probably a good thing. Otherwise, she'll manufacture it. But a lot of these robot, like fucking stoic guys, I've not seen any that are with fucking like hot girls because it's not really fucking fun. Unless you want some old bag that just wants some like provider and some like stable dude because she's got a kid and shit like that and she's 30 now. These younger women, and like hot women, they're gonna want to see emotions out of you. And the biggest cheat code is if you can manufacture emotions that you don't feel. But that's like a master level. You're probably not nearly that. Because then your next question is how to be cold-hearted and not care what others say. It's not about being cold-hearted. People can say things to me and it can still be like, I didn't like hearing that. And it's like, not upset me, but it's still like, well, fuck this guy. It's about showing every facet of emotion. Because that's what women like and that's what people expect to see when they're interacting with you in your day-to-day. It's not about running around as the Terminator. Just pulling the trigger on people non-stop and not giving a fuck. Because that's pretend. Even the killers, like the fucking like gangsters, or like rappers and that shoot each other, they do it on drugs. They don't fucking like, it's not natural to like just run around hurting people. If it's fucking natural for you to be like some cold-hearted dude, you're probably a fucking psychopath. Or have like antisocial personality disorder or something, because it's not a normal place for humans. Or we wouldn't still exist. Like we would have already destroyed each other. Not caring what others say is important though. But it depends. It's important if they're telling you things that like are bullshit. But if they're telling you not to do things because you're doing dumb thing after dumb thing, well then maybe they're not the problem. But with me, like I'll jump on my TikTok or my social media or something like that, and half the comments are more just guys insulting me or saying fucking garbage or like, anons or fucking losers saying a bunch of crap. That can't like weigh you down. If you, it's like saying the old saying, the lion doesn't turn around for every dog that barks, because if he did, he wouldn't get very far. It's part of the fucking game. You just use that as engagement, you use that as fuel, negativity, to fucking like level up. You're not going to be doing anything that's outlandish or like standing out if you can't handle the heat. Like you can't handle being criticised, or like people that are going to point at you and laugh at you and call you names. You can't get upset about that shit. Otherwise they fucking control you. You're like their slave. So you have to fucking push forward regardless. Good question. Who do you do things in your life for besides yourself? That's a good question. For me, a big inspiration is my daughter. She's almost 4 this year. She'll be 4 next month. And she's a massive inspiration for me. When she was born, I made like $1 million that year. And I think I made like $1 million every year after, since she was born. She was born not that far long after I'd been out of jail. Been out of jail probably like 1 year, and she was born. She's a massive inspiration for me. I know that people will say like kids and stuff like in this day and age don't matter. I have fucking like pretty much got everything. I've got everything that like, I don't have like yachts and fucking like, I don't know, a jet, like some sort of massive hypercar or something like that I burn around in, but I've got much. I can buy pretty much everything else. And there's nothing that compares to having a kid. Like, there's just nothing. There's nothing that compares to like that feeling when like you, and again, it is the feeling. See, a lot of guys are turned off from that. They'll pretend that feelings don't exist or that they don't matter. But feelings are a massive motivator. Like, if something makes you feel good, you're going to want to do more of it. And if something makes you feel bad, you're going to want to do less of it. And often the things that feel bad, it's like you're telling you not to do fucking lots of it. But when you turn off from your emotions and things like that, a lot of guys get that distorted. The feeling of like walking in and your daughter's like waiting at the door, or like, she sees you and she hasn't seen you in a long time and she like runs up and like jumps on you and shit like that. That's just uncomparable. Like it's uncomparable to fucking anything. Like, buying a new car or like buying, I don't know, lots of goods or like, seeing things. It's not the same. It's not the same seeing like, someone that's pretty much you fucking like, changing. Like, you're seeing them grow up and they're becoming like a fucking adult. Like, and it's happening in real time. Like it's like the butterfly effect. Like these little things that you do are like sculpting a fucking person. It's just fucking crazy. It's amazing. It's like, yeah, a lot of the stuff that people value, that's when I learnt that a lot of the stuff people value is crap. Like, once my daughter was born, and as I watched her like grow up year after year, the first year I wasn't like really that massively connected to her, like the first 6 months or whatever. I still was, but it wasn't the same because she like couldn't talk, or like, she was still like kind of a baby. She wasn't, I was still connected, but it wasn't like it was when she got older. Then I started to see her like becoming like a little girl. Yeah, it's completely different. It doesn't compare to like, buying goods or crap or consuming or like, having hookups or having threesomes, foursomes, fucking having girls non-stop rotations, whatever you want to call it. It just doesn't compare. It's just so fucking different. It's crazy when someone's like whole life relies on you. Like, they trust you completely. They have no reason to fucking like, you've never betrayed them or hurt them or something like that. It's like an innocence that you want to protect. It's like when you walk around with your kids and you see them like to interacting with other kids or something. It's like a massive part of you just has exited your body. And like, it's like a rawness, if you want to fucking protect them so much, but you still have to let them live their life. It's like fucking, it's like letting go and just realizing like the person, like you could get really hurt here, but you still have to let go because it feels good. A lot of you guys can't do that, like in a relationship or something like that, because you're like damaged. You've had a real bad experience, and now the thought of letting go and just letting someone in scares the fuck out of you. And then you're just going to live like a really shallow existence, not letting anyone in, not getting hurt either, yes, but you won't know joy or sadness. Like you don't understand that you're missing the upside. Just because you're sitting on a fucking neutral ground, that's not a good outcome. It's like entering the game and not winning or losing. You've just settled for the draw off the bat, but you don't know glory, but you also don't know defeat. Because in the fucking hard times, the heartbreaking moments and where you do get your heart stomped on, that's where you change. That's where the fucking like fire is forged. It's in the downside. Like, I've had massive amounts of downside, and if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have fucking like made it to where I am. I put a status up the other day that trauma is either a slingshot or a noose around your neck, and it's very true. Like, trauma itself is the motivation to change. You know, it's the hard times, the pain that you change. It's not you can't change when everything's going up. Like, when everything's going, you're in a roll and everything's working out and shit like that. That's not where the growth happens. It's like you have to feel the fire and like fucking melts you and fucking like destroys you, and then you can like re-sculpt yourself into whatever you want, because you're being like essentially melted down to a liquid, like you've been completely fucking crushed. You know, it's some of my best times are in the fucking like sadness. You know, in the crushing moments, I think about them often. You know, I think about the hard times more than I think about the good times. You know, every day of mine is good now. You know, every day I have everything. I have a fucking great life. I miss my daughter a lot. That's the one thing that I'll change in the future when she's older and she can travel. But everything else I have, you know, when it's the times that I miss are the hard times. You know, it's the grind. It's the fucking like moments where I thought that I was going to fucking die. You know, it's the moments that I thought like internally I fucking had died. You know, the heartbreaks, the fucking like, you know, the loss. That's just what life is. You know, I sat in the Veterans Hospital and I'd be with a lot of guys on medication, and I myself took medication for quite a while, and for PTSD. And I didn't know the joy or sadness. I was stuck in like a middle fucking like a zombie mode. Like, it was just in the mid-range. I wasn't like shit would happen and I didn't really care, but I did not care. You know, I was just like it was like almost a fucking like hellish, like purgatory. I didn't know sadness or like victory. But then I couldn't change because I didn't realize how fucked up my own life was. Like, I was looking at 10 years for drug trafficking. I was already being charged. I was sitting in an army hospital for 14 months. I didn't like know how fucked up and bad the position I was until I got to prison from the army hospital and I stopped taking the medication. I realized, like, fuck this, I'm fucking like in the shit. I had to go through the withdrawal off the medication, vomiting and all that crap for fucking days, like probably a week. In jail, no one fucking gives a fuck. But that's where the growth is, man. Like, fucking sitting there hugging a toilet bowl in prison while you're sharing a cell and you're vomiting into the night while cunts tell you to shut the fuck up because you can't stop vomiting and people are trying to sleep. And cunts are like, fucking, you better stop vomiting, you're gonna get stabbed in the morning. That's where the fucking growth happens. You know, it's the hard times. Like, yeah, you got no water and you're just fucking vomiting everywhere and you got nothing. And you're just vomiting your guts up, no one gives a shit. That's where the fucking, like, you know, that's where the growth happens. You know, at times like that are, again, like, fucking priceless memories of fucking suffering. You know, that's the shit that I think about, that I fucking, like, survived that, but also didn't just survive it, but come out a fucking multi-millionaire. You know, it's the slingshot effect that I know how to use very well. What are you missing from crime years? I still miss the fucking riding. Like, I miss the rolling. I miss the fucking, like, you know, I'd have me and my friend. We'd go to work, like start working like 10 to probably 4, hustling at night. And I miss those hours. I miss the fucking, like, you know, I'm a night guy. You know, it's fucking nearly 2 o'clock in the morning here. I'm just a guy that's most on at night. You know, in the early mornings, I've always had like a fucking, just like that witching hour, they say. It's just when I think that I'm at my best. You know, it's when I think that it just gels well with me this time. I love that everyone's asleep and I'm up. I used to love that everyone was asleep and I was up making money, and I'd make all the money before them. I used to think, like, while they were asleep, I'm like taking all their money. And then by the time they like woke up to go to work, I'd be like slowing down, but I've already made shitloads of money that day. So yeah, I miss that. I miss the fucking, like, you know, the fun times. I've got so many stories of shit that happened then. I mean, fucking too many crazy stories probably to talk about on here. Just so many fucking crazy stories. A lot of people wouldn't even believe them. So yeah, I miss the ride and it just rolling around in the early hours of the morning doing shit. I miss just watching like a pile of cash and just seeing how high I could get it, stacking it. Miss the money, but the money's to make now is great. So, but it's more, yeah, I miss the hustle. I miss, like, fucking, you know, getting dope and then cutting it and doing things to it and things like that that make it multiply. and people don't really know that it's cut, like getting into all the synthetics or like, things like that. I wasn't like a big synthetics guy, but just more like the cutting stuff, the stuff that they use, things like that. That's interesting. How to stop using drugs. It didn't say what drug you're using. I think each drug is a little bit different to quit. But of course, it's just going to be to stop using the drugs. I'm not one of those guys that was big on like, you need to like wean off or do all this crap. I just quit cold turkey. I was taking coke. I quit like, I didn't quit just one day, but I quit like wean down. Not taking other drugs. Like I wasn't like weaning off fucking like, guys will be like, oh, I'll wean off coke, but then I'll take like fucking some other crap that's, synthetic or something like that. I'm more a guy that, I dropped the dose slowly over like a week probably, and then I just quit. But I have that personality where I can just quit. I had personality where I can quit drugs. I could never really quit gambling. Gambling to me was just a massive scourge. Like it was so much worse than quitting drugs. It was nearly took everything from me. Nearly took everything out of me. Drugs to me were quite easy to stop. Like I was taking coke nearly every day, and I could still fucking quit. I don't think drugs even match the slightest like fucking hair on gambling. I think gambling itself is the worst addiction that you can ever have. It's the hardest one to overcome. It's the most insidious because people don't know that you've gambled everything. Like if someone comes home and they're smacked up or they're high or whatever, it's very obvious, or they're drunk. But with gambling, like you can fucking like a guy can walk to the toilet while his wife's sitting in the lounge, take a shit, and then have lost like fucking money on a horse race or something and lost like their rent for the week, and she would be none the wiser. So I think with quitting drugs, you just have to decide that you want to quit, and then you have to stop taking them. It's not rocket science. It's not fucking like there's no magic, magic pill that you need to take other shit just to quit drugs. I think that's bullshit. If you need to like take other crap just to get off one thing, I think that you've got a massive problem. I think with that shit, you just need to quit. The best advice that I ever got was probably from Kevin Samuels. I used to talk to him for probably like, I don't know, maybe we talked like 10 or 12 hours all up. And he just told me that don't give a shit what other people think. Don't fucking like, you can't change your past. So you just need to like fucking accept it and move into the future. And it doesn't matter what people say. Like it doesn't matter that people fucking like, he used to just always tell me like, fuck what people think. And just do what you think is right. And do fucking like, you have a story and you should get it out there in front of people. I had a lot of respect for him because he was like a guy that had reinvented himself so many times. He had a lot of fucking like obstacles. He's a black guy, like a black professional guy, a corporate guy. And I would say he wasn't like a really successful guy until he was older. So I think that, he's very inspirational to me. He's not like a street guy, but he still has disadvantages because he's a black guy in the corporate world. Like I think that only a fucking like retard would say that then people like that don't have like barriers, which he still overcome in his own way. And he left a mark on the world, whether people will say that he's fucking bad or good. He's still fucking like left a mark. I think that if he had lived a few more years, he would have been even bigger and left a bigger mark on the world. But I think that, he's a very educated guy. He's very intelligent. He's a very good fucking like role model for guys of his skin color. I think that I don't want to get too far into the conspiracy theories for why he's not here, but I don't really believe the story that we were told. I talked to him for fucking like not that far before he died. I think that it's bullshit. But that's just the way it goes. There's a lot of fucking like issues in America with that specific skin color. Like they're really doing a lot of damage to that community. And I think that he was someone who spoke to that community a lot. And he spoke a very different message than what the rappers and fucking thugs and all that crap pump out to him that fucks their whole life up. All right, another question. After how much money should you go back to dating? I don't think that you should. If you're not making like, maybe you're in America and you're making less than 50K a year, I think that you should dedicate like 10% of your time to dating. I'm not one of those guys that says that you need to become like some fucking incel just to be like making money. That's all that matters. Because then you would just get like socially weird around girls and it can become a big problem. You know, it can become a problem later on when like you have no experience dating or experience with women, and then you like fucking fall in love with the first one, or like, you know, knock a chick up, or you don't have any experience, you can't retain her, you can't get like really anything out of it, and she can cause you a lot of issues because you're inexperienced. And the issue can be that you're inexperienced, but now you have money, so you're a bigger, softer target. Like you're a big target, but you're soft. Like you've got the money now, but you don't have like the network or the experience. And if you're weird around women, it's going to be hard because you're going to be fucking like around your guys, chicks, and you're going to be weird around them. Like it's just natural if you've got very little experience because you've been focusing on money. I think that it's, you know, it could be detrimental. I think that, yeah, 10% of your time, if you're on less than 50K a year and you can ramp it up as you fucking like cross bigger barriers, you can ramp your time up that you spend trying to organise dates. Either organise dates or like dating girls or fucking girls or whatever. I think that 10% of your time is probably not a bad amount. 10% of your awake time. So maybe like you're spending like an hour a day on it, on average. I don't think that's bad. Because sex is a big motivator. You know, it's everyone wants to get laid. Like everyone enjoys it. So if you use it right, you can fucking like use it to motivate you to become more successful, but also more like fucking in the gym and things like that. Things that are going to get you better pussy. Thoughts on Jordan Peterson? I think Jordan Peterson's a very good theorist. I think he's a very good role model and that he says everything. I think from what I've seen, I'm not saying fucking everything because someone will be extreme and be like, oh, do you agree with this? From what I've seen, I've probably watched like an hour or two of his fucking shit. I don't watch him every second. But from what I've seen, I think that he's a very good theoretical role model. He's a very good theorist. He's a very good guy who speaks to guys who are like starting out at rock bottom. I think that he's a very good guy he's like a philosopher or something like that, but he's not a leader of men. Like, you know, it's pretty obvious. I mean, no one's going to fucking stand behind Peterson in not today or fucking even when he was 20 years old and be like, this is the guy I want to fucking like go to war with. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Like, if someone told me like, you have to take a punch from Peterson in his prime at like 20 years old, I wouldn't really be that worried. Like I don't think that. I think when he says shit like, you know, you got to be a monster and you got to do this and you got to do that, it's just like a theorist talking. Like he knows what to say, but he himself isn't there yet. And that's fine. You know, I'm not saying that fucking like he's meant to be like fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, but some people are just theorists. You know, he's like a professor. He knows all the shit to say and he inspires a lot of people, and I would say he's had a net positive impact for sure. So I don't think that everyone needs to have everything down. You know, I'm not saying that I have everything perfect either. So I think that he's a net positive. But I'm very much a realist, you know. I don't look at people and bullshit. Like I don't bullshit about myself either. But I don't bullshit and be like, just because I like the guy, that means that I'm just going to fucking lie about everything. I don't think that the world is like fucking like that. There's a lot of different shades. But I'm not saying that I disrespect him or think that he's a bad guy or think his message is bad. I'm just saying that I take him as more of a theorist than a guy who is exactly living everything that he says. I think that, that's my take on him. But I do respect what he says, and I think that he's very intelligent. And he's a very good fucking talker, that's for sure. My bro's on the inside right now. Any advice for someone doing 6+ years? A big fan. Love your work. Depends what the advice is. If it's for you, you just need to accept that he's gone for a considerable time. You should send him letters, I guess, but not all the time. Like you need to remember that you've got to live your own life and you're not responsible for his decisions. You're not the guy that fucking like he wouldn't want you to fucking like be doing 6 years with him. Some guys will have like a crew member, and I know what that's like. I've got friends of mine that are doing over 10 years still. And it's almost like they're in prison with them. They feel guilty or they feel like they can't fucking like, their life stops. That's a bad fucking thing for you. You need to forget him, essentially, for like 6 years, and I know it's difficult. You need to still like send him letters and things like that, but you need to accept that that's not going to change. Like he's gone for that period. And you sitting there worrying about him, shit like that, that's going to make his time harder because that energy is going to transfer through to him. Like, you know, it's going to come through in your letters and things like that you're concerned. A place like prison is not a place to have doubt coming in or self-doubt. You just need to accept that nothing that you say or like fucking do is going to change his situation. You know, so you just need to forget that he's in there. essentially. You need to live your own life and fucking move on. And when he gets out, I know it's your brother, but you need to understand that if he is destined to go back to prison, you don't want to be associated with that. You might want to move away. I'm not saying that it's fucking easy, if he's your brother or whatever, but I might be off base that he's not destined to go back to prison. But it's a lot of people learn really bad habits in jail, and a lot of people, when they get out of prison, they don't really have anything else other than the people around them that they can use as assets to fucking pretty much drain. So that's my fucking take, because I've seen that happen a lot of times. And I wouldn't want to see you think that you fucking owe people shit, so now you fuck your whole life up while they sit in prison. How to overcome porn, comfort, junk food addictions. Fuck, that's a few addictions there. But it's all manufactures back to the same thing. Like, you're addicted to the easy fucking gain. Like, you're addicted to the easiest thrill. The fucking, the dopamine, or the, rush of doing nothing, like eating garbage and fucking watching porn, all that crap. Porn, I would say, is the most fucking, probably damaging one. So one that needs to go the first. But a lot of that shit, you just need to learn self-control. You need to respect yourself and your body and think, you've only got one body, why do you want to bog it down with garbage? Watching a lot of porn is just putting barriers between getting actual sex, and then all this other shit, you're putting barriers as well, you're addicted to junk food and shit like that. So I would start to wonder that maybe you've got some mental issue going on. You're making yourself essentially unlovable by doing all this sort of crap. Porn, you're taking away the need for a girlfriend. And if she's spending time with someone who watches heaps of porn and you've got a girl, she's going to rub off. That desire, and that's not really going to come through because you're servicing your needs with porn. So it's going to be a fucking problem. So yeah, my advice is going to be to just quit and fucking give yourself some reason why you quit, join a boxing gym or go to the gym more or things like that, and start to respect your body and be I don't want to feed it garbage. Because once you're in the boxing gym, and if you're eating fucking popcorn and chips and shit like that, you're going to get smacked around a lot. You're not going to be able to perform on that sort of a diet. So that's why it'll force you to do shit. If you could have dinner with anyone from the dead, who would it be, and what would you ask or talk to them about? I probably wouldn't go back in the past. I don't really believe in that. I don't believe in thinking about people that I would see that were dead. I've said before, I've known fucking over a dozen people that have died in probably the last 5 or 6 years, and I've been to no funerals. I'm just not really a guy that lives in the past. I try not to. I know that it's very fucking damaging. It's very damning to fucking sit back and be I miss this person, or I want to talk to this person, or I think about this person. For me, that doesn't work. It goes very much against who I am. So I don't believe in that. And when I die, I don't want a lavish funeral either. So I don't sit there and think it's how I am with others. I expect others to be with me. So I think that the best way to honour me is to watch this shit but move on. Don't fucking sit around and be oh, I miss Steven, or think about him all the time. That's crap. You've got to fucking live your own life. You got to accept that loss is a part of life and just keep pushing forward yourself. The best honouring of someone is for you to be a happy, successful person. And success is different for many people. Success to me isn't being a multi-millionaire. That's one thing. That's obviously one form of success, the money side. But if someone's just works and they're on $60K a year and they're got 2 kids and a partner at home, that they're creating a legacy, and they're creating a family and creating a safe environment for their kids, that's very important to me. I would say that guy is definitely on par or probably higher than the multi-millionaire, unless he has the same thing. Because to me, that's pretty much what life's about. It's about creating safe environments for your kids and leaving a legacy and refining your genes through your kids. Teaching them what you know, so that they get a leg up in life, and then you're essentially refining yourself through your gene pool till it gets to the best version. That's just what life's about for me. It's not about being fucking, running around with a bunch of expensive goods and crap. I know that a lot of girls, specifically women, I would say, get sold this consumerism, they have to buy a bunch of crap like Sex and the City. And that's just a bullshit strategy. That's just to keep them fucking single and consuming and working and paying taxes, not draining society by taking leave and shit to have kids, being single, the single working robot. But when they get older, this is going to be fucking pay the piper. What was time like in jail, if you can talk about it? I've talked about jail a fucking lot. It's not like, hell. I wasn't sitting there fucking shitting my pants every minute. It's just a waste of time for me. Like, it's, for someone like me, it's a waste of time. If you're rich and you're sitting in prison and you've got, like, potential to earn and things like that on the outside, it's pretty fucking dumb. Like, where you'll look around and realise, like, most of the people there are junkies with nothing, and them sitting in jail doesn't matter. Like, their time's worth fucking nothing. But then when you're sitting in jail, it's, my time's worth a lot. So it doesn't really make much sense. It's pretty crazy to me to sit there. What are you looking for in a woman? Why are you still alone? I'm not really alone. I have a girl that I'm seeing now. And even if I was fucking alone, I don't really, it's more by choice. It's not like I'm alone sitting there fucking crying on my bed. Yeah, ideal woman for me is she's got to be attractive, quite beautiful. She's got to be like feminine. She's got to be dressed like a stylish dresser. Doesn't mean that she's running around in like fucking Armani. But she's got to be a stylish dresser. She's got to be feminine. She's got to like, wearing heels and things like that. She's got to like to be like beautiful. She's only going to have whatever her genetics give her, for face and things like that, but she's going to be fit. I don't run around with some fucking belly hanging out. That's crap. She's got to be, to me, like a doll. Like, I like a girl that's like a doll. She walks around next to me and I'm like with a beautiful woman. And I look and I'm like, yeah, she's beautiful. That's what I like. I don't like to walk around with some fucking bush pig. That's crap. But, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, those are the main things, but there's also personality, character comes into play. She's got to have integrity. She's got to have values. She's got to have things that she won't break. She's got to be loyal. I like to test loyalty. It's just who I am. I always test. I always offer things to see if this person's still loyal, or like offer situations or things to see if this person's going to fuck me over. It's just in my nature. I've been burnt by women before. I had a chick snitch on me. So, yeah, it's in my nature to always test to see if fucking like she's loyal. I expect a massive amount of loyalty. It's just such a turn on to me when a girl's like completely loyal, almost like blind loyalty. I really like that. I respect that. If a person's loyal, there's no more attractive quality, even in a friend, like a guy. If someone's just loyal, it's just such a fucking, like, you can do anything with that person. Like, you can take them to the top. Like, you can take them anywhere, because loyalty is just, it's the ultimate trait. And loyalty to me means that you have to take the back seat sometimes. You have to, I want a girl that, like, sometimes she knows that, like, she might be the one that, it's watches me from the sideline and I'm the one winning, and sometimes that happens with friends where you watch them on the sideline and you're the one winning and they're still cheering you on. They're still like a cheerleader. That's very important. A woman needs to be your biggest fan, for me. She needs to be like telling you that she thinks that you're hot, like sexy, attractive, like, she's turned on when she's around you, she's interested, she's like fucking flatters you a lot. And I know a lot of guys think that means that it's like they've got an insecure or whatever. But I'm extremely secure. It's just what guys like to be told. It's very Western ideas that guys pretty much can exist on like no compliments. They don't even like pretend that guys don't want to be told that they're good at things. That they're attractive, or like, that they did a good job for something. Like, they've got a girl and they think that the chick doesn't tell them anything because like she's like, oh no, I don't want to give him a big head. Like, oh, I don't want to give him a big ego. Every guy has an ego. That's just the way it is. Like, maybe your ego is fucking been starved for like the last 20 years and it's like a fucking like famished kid in Ethiopia that hasn't eaten in fucking like 200 years. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. A lot of the reason guys do dumb shit now, like troll and get on and say a bunch of negative comments and things like that, is because they're like insecure, but they're also unhappy because they themselves haven't been flattered. Like, they don't have, their cup is empty. Like, they're completely depleted. So they just shit the world up now. My cup's very fucking full. Like, I can always give compliments, and I always do. I always give compliments to girls around me. If I'm seeing a girl, or like I see a girl and she is beautiful, I'll just say it. I'm not one of those guys that runs around and negs girls and crap, because that's bullshit. Like, that's dumb. If you're negging beautiful women, you're pretending that they're not beautiful because you sit there and you think like, oh, nah, man, I just have to like, I have to tilt the tides in my favour by everyone tells her she's hot or whatever. That shit doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter what you say. It's who you are. Like, if you're the guy that's clearly the fucking dude and you tell a chick she's beautiful, it doesn't diminish you. It actually makes you more attractive. But if you're some fucking dork and you don't qualify, and then you run around and tell her that, oh no, you're not that special, because you're trying to lower her value to match yours. That shit's bullshit. Like, that's never going to really fucking work. That used to work back in the day. It used to be a thing in high school or something. But now women are on Instagram and that they know if they're beautiful. Like, it's very fucking obvious. So yes, women are generally more confident now than they used to be. Even over here, Eastern Europe, that sort of craps doesn't really work. It's funny too, because you get a lot of guys, like when I posted the TikTok thing, or my guy posted the TikTok thing about girls not wanting to be, girls wanting to be shown off. And then some fucking dorks like, oh no, that's only in the West. I've lived in Eastern Europe. I've lived fucking around the world. It's in every country. A lot of guys think that like there's some fucking girls are different over here. They're still the same. Like, beautiful women still want to be shown off. Unless you're in some like really conservative religious, extremely conservative religious environment where they can't do that shit, they want to do it. You understand that a lot of that shit is fucking dumb. Like, guys will think if they come to Eastern Europe they'll be drowning in women, and they won't. The women here are probably harder to fuck. Like, they're harder to fuck because they won't fuck a loser. Like, they won't fuck just a guy who just wants to fuck that can't support a family. A lot of the women here are more thinking long term. There's still some hoes in that around, but it's not like the US or Australia, where a lot of girls just treat their body like a toilet. Like, they don't care who jizzes in them. It doesn't really matter. It's crazy. A lot of women here aren't on contraception and that, so they would keep it if they got pregnant by accident. They're quite religious. So a lot of they're a bit pickier with who they fuck. In the US or like Australia or something, everyone, chicks just like double dosing the pill and like just takes the plan B, but has like a fucking life script pretty much sitting in the cupboard, so it doesn't matter. Like, they don't care who disrespects their body. Like, the thought of STDs and that, they don't really give a shit. They just shit the world up. My favourite memory from drug dealing. One of my favourite memories from drug dealing was down at Byron Bay. I hadn't been doing it long, and I had a friend of mine with me, and me and him went down there one weekend. We'd actually lost a heap of pills like a couple of nights before that. I was fucking like wasted. This is when we were just starting out. And I dropped like, I don't know, a lot of fucking ecstasy. And that was at that time. I think back then it was probably like 50 pills or something. We were only just starting out. But it was a lot for me at the time. And looking back, it was probably like $500 worth or something. So it wasn't a lot. But when you're just starting out, you don't have a lot of money. That's still like a considerable amount of your inventory. We'd only just started out, literally. And then we had like fucking, I don't know, maybe we dropped like 80 pills or something. Maybe 100. And had like 100 left. And then we took the 100 pills that we had and made them into capsules. And then we could give half the pill, like half of them into capsules and give them to people because they were still quite strong. And then we went down to Byron Bay because we had like, we got to make our money back so that we can buy like, double the amount next week. And then we went down to Byron Bay and we're selling them in like 2 of the clubs there. Just selling the fucking capsules. And we made money. We sold fucking like probably 80% of them or something. And then the security, like I was talking to the security before we went in, like respectful and nice and things like that. You always have to be nice to security. It's not nice like you're sucking their balls, but you have to be respectful, look them in the eye. And security guard comes running out, and we're fucking like selling shit. And then he's like, you got to go. He's like, you got to get the fuck out of here now. And I was like, what? And a friend of mine, he was like halfway through a sale. And then I'm like, we got to go now. And he's like, wait, I got to eat the cash. And then got the money and I'm like, let's go, fucking leave now. And we ran out of the club. We ran out of the club. And then just as we're like probably 20 meters away from the club, it's probably like 1 a.m. About 20 meters from the club, this fucking like 2 cop cars pull out front of the club. Like pull out front, and the cops just jump out and go running out. And then fucking like cops run straight past security, no fucking like fucking around. Detectives, and then ran into the club. And then we saw like another guy like run out, like another cop. So they ran in, and then we were walking up the street. We didn't want to start running because like we thought that would draw too much attention. So we're just walking faster up the street. And then another cop like comes running out, and then he's like looking up the street. And then there was this fucking like rickshaw. There was no taxis or anything, but there was this fucking rickshaw parked there, and it had one of those boom boxes on it. It was kind of like a tuk-tuk, but it had like fucking just some like stoner driving it. And I was like, I'll give you $100, but can you drive us to this place that we're staying at? And it was like fucking ages away. It was like probably, I don't know, maybe like 7 miles or something. And he had to pedal. It took him probably like, I don't know, maybe like 45, 50 minutes to get there, maybe an hour. And he pedaled there the whole way. And then we pedaled out and I could see the cops like pretty much looking over and looking up once we were pedaling by. But then like they didn't do shit because obviously no one's going to fucking get away on a like guy on a push bike with a boombox, and he was pumping like 50 cent or some bullshit. And then we fucking, so we got away from the place and like rickshaw. But obviously at that time, like we could have been busted, that was like amateur hour. We were just starting out. But the times like that, I think about a lot of that shit. It's the sloppy like amateur stuff. It's just where things start. It's sometimes big things start from like small crazy fucking like having the balls to do something like that. And it's not something that is probably for you. It's the game's very different now. It's a different world. There's a lot more surveillance. Thoughts on global warming activists. I'm going to end on this one because it's fucking almost 2 hours and it's like 2:20 here. My thoughts on the global warming activists are that a lot of them have a massive ego, and it's a way for them to get attention by being destructive. For a lot of those like oddities or like freaky people or something like that, there's not really a lot of ways that they can get attention and respect. So they get caught into a lot of these like fucking like webs, like sticky bullshit. They get dragged into a lot of this crap because it's easy, right? Like it's easy to get angry and like fucking tie yourself to a tree and things like that and do a lot of that crap because it's a way to get attention. I think for a lot of them, if they took away like the cameras and the media crews and things like that, I think they would lose like half or more of the people. They wouldn't really be interested in it anymore. I think for a lot of them, it's a way to get attention as a freak. Like you're a freaky person, so now you're fucking like, your part of your identity goes from, I'm not a freak anymore, I'm like obsessed with the climate or things like that. I'm just different, I'm an activist. I think a lot of the activists, if they tested them, that have like mental disorders. I think that activism in general, it's just really like pushing agendas for the corpos. A lot of that global warming stuff is bullshit, I think. I think that they're pushing for these clean energy projects where only a small amount of the corporations make massive amounts of money, and the pleb class are the ones that get taxed to pay it, and the corpos build it. And then they're obviously realizing now that a lot of wind and stuff, like it's unprofitable, it doesn't really like work. And the wind itself is like a massive eyesore. If you're driving past and you see like all these wind turbines, like you go through, I was driving around like near Prague and saw a bunch of wind terminals. It's fucking ugly. A lot of them weren't even working. Like they didn't even look like they worked at all. So it's just a waste of time and money. A lot of them will just be like, the government gives their contracts to like these fucking, like pretty much slush funds. So they get like these expensive government contracts that are taxpayer funded, and then they give them to like their fucking friend's business or like business that they've themselves got equity in and things like that. Or the business where then the like diplomat or like minister or whatever leaves his job, and then that company hires him for the rest of his life on a massive slush fund. So a lot of that is just, it's massive corruption. I don't know if global warming's real. I'm not going to sit there and say that fucking it's not or it is. I'm not a high level scientist, but I do understand that a lot of it is just like a capitalism itself. It's just a way to make money. It's another avenue to like, exploit. And the pleb tying himself to the tree is kind of like, he's wasting his life. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you're doing that shit, like your time's pretty worthless. Like, wouldn't your time be better spent like becoming somebody and just planting millions of trees? But that's the hard way, obviously. Like that's the way that actually gets shit done. But that's the hardest route. It's easier to just like either tear shit down or just stand in front of like fucking statues and crap. It's difficult to be like, actually, I love the environment so much that I'm going to like buy a fucking rainforest myself and then protect it. But that's the hard part. That's generational then. It's easier to just fucking like tie yourself to a tractor and then have your friends photo you and then tell everyone how fucking cool you are. See, that's bullshit. All right, lads. It's fucking late here. That's enough for me. Till next time.